patrol, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people, our little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for tuning in at spacedoutradio.com and on Spreaker. As once again we come in from the frozen Canadian tundra, battle our way past the wild animals, sidestep Bigfoot, and enter Uncle Jimbo's cabin, stoke the fire, heat this place up, and broadcast you live on this Monday night, early Tuesday morning if you're on the East Coast. Hey, if you're on the East Coast right now, it's my birthday. So I am accepting happy birthdays only from East Coasters right now. In an hour, it'll be from Central Time and East Coasters. That's the way we're going to work this. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we do this thing 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the strange, the weird, the supernatural, paranormal, and so much more. Spaced Out Radio's music is brought to you by the guitar god himself, Ron "BUMBLEFOOT" THAL. You can find his album Little Brother Is Watching by going to our website, spacedoutradio.com. Hey, if you're a social media junkie like I am, you can follow us on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, you can subscribe to it, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. As we do every night at this time, we would love to say a hello to those listening in on the SHR Media Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles and the SOR Space Travelers, as well as online at Paranormal Forum. If you're a fan of Spaced Out Radio, coming soon is our Space Travelers membership, where for only $5 a month, yeah, just $5, you can enter to win prizes, take part in private group interviews, monthly newsletters, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. The official newspaper of this show is the New Agora newspaper, and the Spirit Story Box, the iPhone app, is the official ghost hunting app of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight on SOR, we head to the Pacific Northwest, where in the shadows of the Emerald City, we find out what's really weird about the state of Washington. From hippies to Starbucks, and from Bigfoot to Microsoft, there's just a little bit of everything happening up there. But the Pacific Northwest also has its secrets. From sea monsters to UFO sightings around its many volcanoes, from haunted underground tunnels to the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Seattle and the surrounding areas have a lot to offer besides legalized marijuana these days. Pacific North Weird is the great little show that can be found on YouTube. Its hosts, Vincent Ynzunza and Alexandra Sullivan, travel around the state looking for the folklore and the legends that make Washington so prevalent. There are plenty of intriguing storylines, from personal experiences to personal relationships with ETs or Bigfoot hopping around. They go out, find them, and tell those stories that go along with it. It's an interesting concept, considering many of these stories and legends have all been but forgotten. Life is too fast for people these days to remember the past. Washington State is a major hub of that, thank you, Bill Gates. So, tonight, we're going to relive some of these tales and see how tall they really are with Vince and Alex from Pacific North Weird. Vince and Alex, welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. How are you?
We're doing great.
We're doing great, thank you.
Awesome. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this, because out of any state that I have traveled to, being just north of you here in British Columbia, Washington State is just, it's a beautiful piece of territory in Cascadia here. I mean, you have a little bit of everything from deserts to the mountains to snow-capped mountains to all the volcanoes going right down the corridor to California and Mount Shasta. It really is an interesting place to live with a little bit of everything, including the Pacific Ocean. Isn't it, Vince?
I think so too, yeah. And I really think all of those things you mentioned, the forest, the ocean, the mountains, the desert, those things have really been the source of a lot of folklore throughout, recorded history. And the fact that we all have them so abundantly here, I think, really adds to kind of the weird quality of this area.
I fully agree. And Alex, I want to get to you here for a quick second. What has been the most intriguing part of all these legends and folklore that surround Washington State? Because everybody looks at the state as, okay, Washington State, we have the volcanoes, we have the ocean, we have Boeing, we have Microsoft, Starbucks, the where they toss the fish, Pioneer Square, the Mariners,
Pike Place, yeah.
Pike Place, sorry. There's so much going on there, and it's really become almost like a hippie yuppieville. But for a lot of people, they have forgotten about the history. And you seem to be wanting to bring that back.
Right. I mean, we have such a rich history, especially of these kind of odd and strange things, which I think attracted Vince and I to the topic of, cryptozoology. So we have Bigfoot as kind of a very regional presence that's almost synonymous with the Northwest. A lot of early UFO sightings were actually occurred in Washington State, such as the Kenneth Arnold sighting, which coined the phrase flying saucer, which we are all familiar with. And there's just been a lot of different sightings that kind of make this area special, especially to us because we're from here. But I think it's also an intriguing regional phenomenon how these different legends and extraterrestrial things kind of come about historically.
Absolutely. And Vince, we bring you back in now because I want to chat with you here for a little bit. A lot of people, when they get into these topics and these types of television shows, online shows, radio shows, whatever it is, it's usually an experience or just a keen interest that really brings it forward. What made you decide that this was something you needed to focus on about the legends and the folklore of Washington State?
Well, it's something that I've just been fascinated with my entire life. I mean, maybe not just being focused on Washington State, or the Northwest. Like, we cover more things than just Washington. We're also into Oregon, Northern California, BC even, it's kind of this entire bioregion that really fascinates us. But early on, I grew up with the X-Files. I grew up with unsolved mysteries. I had my own strange experiences as a child. I recall being 4 years old, and there was something in my room. I look up, and there's this, what I described at the time as a large-headed, large-eyed blue boy standing at my bed. Of course, at the time, I didn't have, proper language or cultural symbols to describe it, but the way I remember it now, it seems like it was kind of an extraterrestrial experience. My mom, to this day, remembers me, emphatically at that, age of 4, telling her there was something in my room, and, I froze up, and I don't remember what happened next. So, I think maybe that was, the trigger that really opened me up early on just to loving, and being interested in the idea that there's something out there that we can't explain. There's some magic in the world. What really opened us up to particularly to creating a show about this particular region and its folklore. Alexandra and I, 2 years ago, went down to McMinnville, Oregon, to the McMenamins UFO Festival. This is a great annual event that commemorates the 1950 Trent Farm UFO photos, photos that wound up on the cover of Life magazine at the time, and really to this day remain some of the most credible visual evidence of ships out there, UFOs happening. And one thing that really struck us about the festival, it's a 4-day thing, and they have this convention center where, a bunch of academics from the UFO community come and speak. George Norrie was there, Kalani Lapsaritis, Peter Davenport, James Clarkson. And they give you like a really rigorous, fun lecture about UFO topics. But at the same time, the entire downtown corridor, 1 block away, becomes UFO Central, and people dress up and have fun with it and everything. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to make a show that combines those two ideas, that combines kind of the serious academia, the documentary approach, but also adds a lot of fun and revelry to it. And we just kind of got to talking from there and really realized that, wow, this place that we grew up in and call home has the cornerstone almost on like paranormal topics in the country. The terms flying saucer, Sasquatch, Bigfoot all came from the Northwest. And we thought, wouldn't it be great just to do a serious but fun show documenting all of that.
Well, this is from British Columbia right down to California, in Northern California. It really is one of the only places on this planet where you can have the heavily wooded forests, you can have the oceanside photography, you can have desert, you can have glaciers, and mountains for skiing. I mean, let's face it, there's not too many other places in the world where you can go fishing in the morning on the ocean, go golfing in the afternoon, and go snow skiing at night. It's really a plethora of activities for the outdoors people here, and that's because the weather is nice when it's not raining. And when it is sunny, everybody wants to get outside and do things. And that's where these sightings are happening. It's a very outdoorsy type community between, well, let's call it Cascadia, because, if we ever separate, that's what we will be. So Alex, we'll bring you in now. Did you ever have any weird experiences growing up that kind of led you down this path to the intrigue that these topics have?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of had a few similar things, similar to Vince. My mom remembers and reminds me often that when I was really young, when I'd first learned to talk, when I was maybe 2 or 3, I would talk about the place I was before and kind of this kind of eerie past life, like, oh, before I was here with you, I was at this place before. I don't remember that, but my mom was really freaked out about it. And then I remember when I was maybe 5 or 6, I thought I saw a vision of the Virgin Mary. I'm not sure if it's just because I had gone to Catholic school when I was that age, but I did have this really kind of spooky experience in my grandma's attic. And I don't know, I just remember always being interested in kind of the unknown. I remember I had a little encyclopedia book, and it was always, the pages were open to the section on ghosts and paranormal things and mysteries. So I think that's really, Vince and I share kind of a passion for these sort of extraordinary things that has gone back a long way. And it's personally kind of been a part of our lives.
See, I'm the rookie here. Both of you had childhood experiences. Mine really didn't start up until about 4 years ago. And that's when I decided to bring my broadcasting degree out of mothballs, and a year and a half ago starting up Spaced Out Radio because I couldn't find the answers that were satisfying. When you were young, Vince, and looking for the answers that you needed to figure out what it was you saw in your bedroom that night, and, I'm sure I'm quite older than you. I'll be 43 in a matter of 2 hours and 45 minutes. But Did you need that confirmation? Did it put you on a quest to try and figure out what was going on? And as you were searching that, were you surprised to learn that there was so many more experiences out there that people had that couldn't be explained as well?
Well, first off, happy early birthday. I know I'm on the West Coast, so I'll give you a time release birthday greeting there. I think my early experience really just sparked my imagination. It just made me naturally open and interested in, not accepting the rules that everyone else gave me. I was always allowed to kind of think beyond those and kind of just do what made sense to me. And I think encountering other people's stories and really just hearing about other people's really, really unique experiences, it was just easier for me to digest those, to accept those, because I almost came from, being 3, 4, 5, when this stuff happened to me. Those are very formative years. And I think they just really made me naturally able to hear a lot of really interesting things and not immediately write them off, as mental illness, or just some who's trying to,
Absolutely. And Alex, what about you? When you had your childhood experiences and growing up, obviously those are experiences that do not get forgotten. I recall at 21 seeing my first UFO. I recall at 28 seeing my first ghost. They just stick with you. Did you have to almost go through life trying to figure out what it was you saw? Was it always that itch that you needed to scratch, or was it something that you kind of put off until you started becoming more of an adult and seeing and hearing about the other stories out there and you're like, wow, I'm an experiencer too? How did that work for you?
I don't know. I think it's hard to pinpoint exactly when, but I think I was always kind of fascinated. Somehow telling the stories was more important to me than discovering whatever the truth was behind it. And I talked to friends, I'd want to know, do you have a ghost story? Do you have something to tell me? Because I want to feel that little sort of thrill that the unknown kind of brings about. So I don't know if I was ever really on a quest to discover the truth per se. But just more being intrigued with the whole phenomenon of how, people experience these different phenomenon that can't be explained rationally, and just allow for that sort of mystery is, I think, very compelling. And I think a lot of people are attracted to feeling that sort of, emotions of not. There's probably the same reason people watch horror movies or ghost movies or things like that. You just want to encounter the unknown or have your brain not understand completely what you're experiencing.
And it's tough for a lot of people out there because they don't know how to react to it. We have talked to a number of experiencers on this show, and one of the things we kind of mock a little bit, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but one of the things we kind of in jest go over is, how are you going to react? If you've never had an experience, how are you going to react? Because there's a lot of people out there who will say, man, I want to come face-to-face with a dogman, or I want to come face-to-face with a Bigfoot or an extraterrestrial. I don't care if they're good or bad. I got to see one, and I'm going to have my camera ready, and I'm going to be ready. But Vince, it really isn't like that for the people who have experienced things, is it?
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. And I think maybe a lot of people who say that they want to experience something, or they want to run, they want to get abducted, they want to run into a Sasquatch out in the forest, they want to experience a ghost. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me in that, the modern world, we're under this illusion that we have everything figured out. We have the great new god of science that is supposed to be able to explain everything and make us feel comfortable. And, a comfortable world is a boring world. So it makes perfect sense, that we're a curious species. We love mysteries. We're kind of like the Scooby-Doo of species out on the planet. We always need a mystery to solve and everything. And, it makes sense that in a world where we're kind of our curiosity is kind of neutered, it makes sense that we're going to look for something maybe that we can't describe. But, like when you actually do run into it, I bet that would probably be a lot scarier than people would think. I personally have not run into a 800-pound, 9-foot-tall hominid in the forest, but, I in a way I'd like to, but at the same time, I bet I would be quite frightened.
And Alex, when you're talking to people, say, who are fans of the show, or you go to these conferences and tell people what you're doing, and you start listening to people, how they would react to things, from all the information that you have learned through Pacific North Weird and the interviews you have done and the shows that you guys have done, does it just kind of make you shake your head a little bit and say, you really don't want that? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I think it is kind of strange when people crave to have this experience. Like, it seems kind of counterintuitive to want the thing that you really shouldn't want. But I guess I understand the curiosity aspect, but I do know it can be completely change people's lives. It can cause all kinds of fundamentally shifted viewpoints that a lot of people probably aren't ready for and don't really want to deal with. At the UFO festival this year, I remember several times people mentioning that these people who have seen things or experienced things are just everyday people. They didn't sign up to have to see this. They just became witnesses because of chance or happenstance. And I think that's the only way it can really happen. I don't think you can go out there and try to force it to happen to you. It's just, and I think that's kind of the wrong attitude to have if you're like, oh, I want this to happen to me. It kind of takes some of the magic away from it. Not magic, because I know it can be negative for some people, but it just makes it less, I don't know, the mystery is not as much there if you're going in there trying to force something to happen.
So, Vince, let's start off with you, as we are about 4 minutes away from us taking our first break of the night. What makes Washington State so weird?
Washington State, 1947, June 24th, Private Kenneth Arnold sees these 9 flying discs going around Mount Rainier. He's interviewed a day later about it, and that's where the term flying saucer is coined. He's asked, like, how do they fly? And he's like, well, imagine skipping a bunch of saucers across the water, and then flying saucers happen. In the Northwest, Northern California, deeper into the Northwest, we get like the term Bigfoot coined by Jerry Crew. The word Sasquatch, an anglicized version of the Salish word for like the shy forest people. This alternate tribe that lives out there. I mean, those superstars of weirdoism, really just come from this area. I think Washington, beyond that, it's just abundant with creativity. This is a very accepting place. Like, a lot of people can really choose to live their own lives the way they want to there. And when that happens, you see a lot of great expression come out. And I think there's a certain quality to just the energy of a lot of weirdos kind of all cohabitating together that really not only brings out, the flying saucers and the Bigfoot, but brings out the weird roadside attractions, the weird public art installations, the eccentric arty celebrities that live here. You can't go to any small town here and not find some weird piece of art, something odd that you want to take a picture of, something that just makes you really happy that you're in this state.
Mm-hmm. And Alex, what about you? Because there is such a unique combination of absolutely everything, like we mentioned near the top of the show, from the technical tycoons to the hippies that wander around. It really is just a beautiful mesh of international people, immigrants, and everybody just getting along, isn't it?
It is. I think the Northwest is very unique because we have a lot of the sort of West Coast values of liberalism or, people into health food and alternative lifestyles and this and that. But we also have a very strong sort of individualist streak of people come here to kind of get away from whatever social constructions were holding them back so they can create their own life. And you meet so many people who don't fit into these standard paradigms of like, oh, I'm politically this way and I live my life this way. But people who completely have ideas that go all over the place politically and socially and have beliefs that might seem unusual to some. And I think that's what makes the Northwest so great, is that we have these kind of outliers that don't fit into a predetermined box. They kind of have forged their own path and made this their home. And I think that's what part of the reason this place is such a rich environment for people to be more creative, more artistic, more open about experiences they might have, and just overall what makes the people here so much more special, at least to Vince and I when we were working on this show.
Alex and Vince, I'm going to get you guys to hold on. We're going to hop out for our first break of the night. We have Alex Sullivan and Vince Ynzunza. I knew I was going to blow that. Damn it. Ynzunza. There we go. Ynzunza. I have to read my own writing. I have to learn how to read my own writing. Ynzunza. There we go. I'm going to remember that now because I feel like an idiot. But you know what? We're going to talk more Pacific North Weird with Vince and Alex right after this. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back after this break.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Hi there. This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? You wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost?
Look no further than Spaced Out Radio.
SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click on to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on radio
or our website, including social media.
From commercial spots to banners, we have it all.
Check out our competitive pricing today.
Want to connect with us online? Find us on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show, on Twitter, @Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. All right, space travelers, here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're on the SHR Media Network, if you're in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, if you are on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Room or Euphoria Chronicles or Paranormal Forum, thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you coming out. Remember, tomorrow night, I'm having a bunch of guests come in. Why? It's my birthday. We're going to have a party, going to have a beer, going to relax, have some fun, and talk about all the weird stuff that's going on. Anybody and everybody can join in. We're going to be taking your phone calls all night long. So join on in. It's a birthday party tomorrow night on Spaced Out Radio. Remember, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, spacedoutradio.com. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. Please subscribe to that. And, of course, our website, where you can find out everything about the show, is spacedoutradio.com. We bring in Alex and Vince from Pacific North Weird tonight. We are talking about the weird happenings of the West Coast here of the United States, even up to British Columbia, where I am. Alex, Vince, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
for having us.
I want to start off with a question, Vince, for you from Galen in our SOR Space Travelers room here. And she is saying, the American Indians talked about the thunderbirds, giant birds flying in the sky that would make a sound of thunder when they crossed over. Have there ever been any sightings in Washington or Oregon regarding the thunderbird that you know of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I certainly know about the legend of the thunderbird, and that it's really married and really connected deeply to the Northwest. I believe in Washington State itself, early on, you have some of like the genesis of the Thunderbird legend. It's not something that I see pop up so much in like recent sightings. Like, you know, like I keep pretty up to date on what people are seeing. And it seems kind of really mired in folklore, kind of the past. But it's just a really interesting phenomenon to me. I would love to see one. We'd both love to do a video kind of capturing that legend at one point. You know, but nothing recent I've heard.
Alex, do you guys take the time to look into a lot of the American Indian, up here we call them First Nations, legends that go around? Never mind just Bigfoot, but there always is so many different types of legends surrounding the land and the mountains and everything that goes on. Do you look into that with Pacific North Weird?
Oh, yeah, we definitely do. It's always kind of our first step when we're looking backwards at a phenomenon. Like, we want to be able to approach it from every angle possible, and there's always the Native American sort of voice of, was this a legend earlier? And it normally has been, like the idea of Sasquatch or Spookum, these wild men that live in the forest, has always been a part of the legend in various Native American tribes. We've interviewed a few people who are actually Native American for our shows, such as Brian, who was in one of our first episodes on the Mima Mounds, and it's always nice to bring in that kind of folklore aspect of of what the creation story is, what the reasoning for this phenomenon is, and it just gives so much depth to the subject matter, I think. And it's just super interesting. I love learning about local folklore and how that fits into it.
I'd like to riff a bit on what Alex said there. One of the main goals of our show, like the core philosophy of it, is like when we do a Bigfoot episode or like an alien episode or anything about something kind of supernatural like that. Rarely is our goal to like prove that aliens exist or prove that Bigfoot exists. Like the heart of our show is examining the way people's lives interact with these phenomena and the way people live around them and everything. And the First Nations people, that's just like a prime example of people who, through their oral tradition, through their legends, have just accepted these phenomena. Be it the Star People, or be it the Skookums, or things like that. And we take it beyond that. A lot of our episodes that you'll see, they're really about the people who are interested in this thing, and that I think really makes the heart of the Northwest. Kind of the paranormal aspect is almost, I would say, the decoration, for our show. It's really about the people. They're the lifeblood of everything we do.
I love the fact that you guys actually take the time to talk to the people who are out there having these experiences. With so many different conferences out there now and so many different radio shows, YouTube channels, television shows, everybody wants, as you said earlier, Vince, the science behind everything, that we need to use the science in order to prove everything. And what that has done, and what I have noticed personally, is, and I've had people tell me this, the experiencer or the experience people are having is no longer beneficial to the research being done. Yet you guys, much like what we're trying to do here on Spaced Out Radio, is trying to say, you know what? It is important that people come in and tell the experiences that they have, because these are affecting these people, these stories, these events are affecting these people on their everyday lives. Vince, is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like there's so many people experiencing these things on like a daily basis, most of which would probably never admit it. It's like you have a certain percentage of people who you think have had experiences. There's probably, for every 5 people who will claim that they've had an experience, maybe 10 others who have seen something weird or unusual and won't admit it. And, but although when you start talking to them and they'll say, oh yeah, this one time I saw this one thing, So ultimately, yeah, you're right. The just sheer number of experiencers doesn't really serve whether we're going to prove this thing or not. It doesn't really help the science. And I think it's really just become so ingrained in our culture. It's such a part of who we are that what we're doing is we're telling human stories. Ultimately, we're talking about the people, the real humans of this area, through the avenue of this weird phenomenon that we all kind of share.
Let's start off with the UFO side of things. Because, as you said earlier, Washington State is really where the crown jewel, the name Flying Saucer, started off, Alex, in regards to it. How much UFO activity is there in Washington State?
Well, I believe there's quite a bit. We're lucky enough to have Peter Davenport, who runs the National UFO Reporting Center, living in Washington State. And he collects national information on almost all UFO sightings that are reported. We also have Washington State MUFON and James Clarkson, who's a great friend of our show, who has a lot of compelling cases. For example, there was a case in Westport in Grays Harbor County in Washington that he has done a thorough investigation on that has shown a pretty compelling argument about UFO phenomenon. There are historical ones such as the Maury Island incident. And just, I feel like here we have a very open mind about UFOs and the potential for extraterrestrial life. And I don't know, when I talk to people, it seems like you ask anybody if they've had a strange experience, and almost everyone I talk to says they've seen something strange in the sky before. We also visited the East Seti Ranch last summer, which is a UFO ranch near Troutdale.
I was going to ask you that.
Is it? Yeah, near Mount Adams. And I saw things in the sky I couldn't explain. I'm not sure I'm willing to say they were definitely spacecraft from another planet, but it was an extremely, life-changing and also just fun experience to go there, see so many people who were passionate about learning about extraterrestrial life with such like a positive sort of open-minded attitude towards it, not one based on fear, but one based on acceptance and positivity. And I think we have just so many resources available to us in the Northwest just because of the way people are so open-minded about the potential of UFO possibilities, I guess.
Well, and let's not forget, Alex, too, that Boeing in Everett, in Seattle, has had a long history of flight. There's also a major naval base in Washington State where the Pacific Fleet sits. There's a lot of aircraft up in the sky. It would be very easy to try and get something under the cover of night into Washington State and maybe look weird. But on the flip side, you did mention, and I was going to bring this up later in the show, about the James Gilliland Ranch, the East Seti Ranch, and there is all sorts of stuff going on there. I remember I had James on this show about a year ago, and the things that he has going on in his property, it's amazing that he still owns that property and the government hasn't taken it over.
It really is, yeah. It was an amazing experience. I came in a little bit skeptical, not sure of what I would see when I got there, but, there were things you just can't explain. And there's lights flashing on the mountain, and there's no explanation for it, and nobody's there. And there are things in the sky moving in a way that's clearly irregular, clearly not something that a traditional aircraft or satellite would be moving at. And it's, there's so many resources for people who are interested in this in the Northwest. What I really want to do is encourage people to experience that. Like through our show, I get so many people saying, oh, you're doing this, you're having fun, you're going on to this conference, I wish I could do that. And the thing is, you can do that. Nothing's stopping anybody from going out and doing that. Go to the East Seti Ranch. It's just as cheap as camping anywhere else. Plus, you get to have this experience where you get to see the sky, have a beautiful view of Mount Adams, and potentially see things that could change your life. And that's part of the reason I love the show, is just going out there and doing things that people may not be convinced to do on their own, like giving them the bravery to step out of their comfort zone and experience things that they're interested in.
Did you see the gnomes running around when you were there?
I didn't see anything like that, no. I can't speak for Vince, though. He might have.
Vince, did you see James's gnomes running around, tending his gardens, running by the river?
I don't remember seeing any gnomes, but we did meet this awesome guy named Frank Lupo, who was in contact with a 7-foot-tall feline alien woman named Bagit, and he had even tattooed her on his inner arm. And she was in one of the ships, that circled Mount Adams, and his story was just amazing. Like he was just so full of joy when he was there, and it was just clear that he looked forward to coming to this ranch every a couple times every year, and just continuing kind of this friendship with this cat person way up in the sky. I think that was probably my very favorite thing of the entire experience, was just talking to Frank.
Let's talk about extraterrestrials here for a moment. Are there a lot of people in Washington State that you have recorded for Pacific North Weird having ET contact? Vince?
I would say not a whole lot that we've actually interviewed who have gone out and said that they've come face to face with an alien. A lot of the people we've interviewed have been on the research side of it. James Clarkson, Peter Davenport, who Alexandra mentioned. Just a lot of the people we've talked to like that are kind of in a way that we are anthologizers of all this information. They collect the data. They add their own ideas and assumptions about it. But not yet. I'd love to talk to more people who have actually had alien encounters. Travis Walton actually is one person we did interview, the Fire in the Sky fella. We interviewed him last year at the McMenamin's UFO Festival, and that was a lot of fun. That was really actually an honor to speak to him. And if you've ever heard him speak, just like the conviction he has, the genuine quality he has to his story. Like you can't help but really believe that he experienced something, maybe 2% of the population will ever experience, and have that type of cogent memory of it.
No, and I fully agree with that. And it's amazing how, when you look at the movie compared to hearing Travis's story up close and personal, how different it is and how violent Hollywood made it out to be compared to what it was. And, unfortunately for so long, he had to keep quiet about it because, that's part of the contract when they're paying you a lot of money to do a movie about your life. But in the end, at least he's able to get the story out. Now, Vince, when we talk about the volcanoes that go from Mount Baker up near Bellingham straight down to Mount Shasta in California and all in between, there's Adams, there's St. Helens, there's Rainier. I believe there's one more. I think I might be missing one. But anyways, Mount Hood, that's the other one. Yeah. There always seems to be such a unique number of UFO sightings around these volcanoes. Mount Shasta especially. Have you ever looked into what is happening with the volcanoes and why there are so many UFO sightings around them?
Yeah. We've talked to a few people who have some really interesting ideas about that. And what we found is that it's actually more than UFO sightings that kind of surround these areas. That's definitely like a really important aspect, but you find a lot of kind of new age spiritual belief systems spring up around that row of mountains. You've got like in the presence of Mount Rainier, you've got Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. J.Z. Knight in Yelm, Washington. This woman who claims to channel this 35,000-year-old Lemurian warrior spirit, who also is sometimes represented as a gray alien. She has like this school of New Age philosophy that happens there. There's people in the vicinity of Mount Shasta and other mountains in that range that talk about reptilians living deep below it. Almost all of them do have the UFO aspect, but we found that there's so much more in the package that just tends to spring up just in the vicinity of these mountains. City Ranch included,
Do you think it has something to do with the energy that the volcano gives off, whether it's the gaseous chemicals that are blowing out? Because even a dormant volcano has to release sometimes. I recall, from where I used to live in BC, I had a beautiful view of Mount Baker. I had the $1 million view if that mountain never exploded. But on the flip side, I have seen UFO activity around Mount Baker. And from what I have studied and looked into, it seems like a lot of these UFOs almost use these volcanoes as some sort of fuel stop or something along those lines in order to get something from them. That's why they're always seen around volcanoes. Have you ever heard anything from that?
Yeah, I think the idea that UFOs might use them as fuel stations, or maybe there's even like caverns in there or like places where they could conceal activity. That makes a lot of sense on a pragmatic level. And that, we certainly heard a lot of theories like that, especially when we were speaking to people at the East City Ranch. I think it could definitely be a combination of maybe that pragmatic convenience of having like these large mountains there, but also at the same time, like it might speak to something primordial within us. Like mountains, they're actually really big things in front of us, and they're kind of beautiful. And it makes a lot of sense that they would almost be treated as idols, and people would be drawn around them. And maybe it's like that presence that kind of opens up this little part of our brain that is more receptive to the things that are behind the veil.
Alex, I want to get into you on this in regards to UFOs and the sightings that have happened. Besides the one in 47, have there been a lot of famous UFO cases around the Pacific Northwest?
I wouldn't say there have been a huge number of like major UFO sighting cases that receive national attention, but I feel like we have a very significant number of regular UFO sightings that happen in our area, and some of them are definitely unexplainable, coming from reliable witnesses, and definitely, things that are beyond understanding. And if you go through Washington MUFON or the UFO Reporting Center, you can find so many examples in our area of things. And in our episode on UFO phenomenon from last year, we did little reenactments on our show, which was a lot of fun, but just on these stories we found on the Washington MUFON site that we found intriguing of these people who had experiences that were odd and bizarre and unexplainable. And I think there is something special here. I know the Southwest has kind of the primo claim on being UFO headquarters, but I think the Northwest has almost as much clout, if not more. And perhaps, I think perhaps the fact that we have rain so much of the time and a lot of tree coverage and cloud coverage might give us a slight disadvantage just because people aren't outside and looking at the sky or can't see very clearly in the sky. But I do think that there's a lot of activity here, and I think there's a lot of people who are open to the idea and would not be dismissive out of hand of such a thing if it happened to them. So I think it makes this region very special.
What do you think people are seeing, or what are the stories that people are seeing in your area that you have investigated? Is it the classic flying saucer? Is it more the black triangles now? Is it a combination?
I think it's a combination. I mean, you see so many different stories, from just glowing lights in the sky that they can't quite explain to the black triangles, the silent black triangles, saucer-shaped discs, people who claim to have had full-on, encounters or abduction experiences. There's a lot of different iterations of the experience, and I think it's just extremely interesting. I don't know, it's hard to imagine that there would be distinctly regional phenomenon happening based on what kind of spacecraft were coming to the Northwest or what have you, but I think it's just very interesting from kind of an anthropological sort of reference, just to record these interesting encounters. And I suppose the majority would just be kind of lights in the sky. We can't quite explain what happened. Something was moving and then it moved away. But I think the more interesting, the more high strangeness involved definitely attracts you more to it. And we definitely have so many stories that show that. And I think it's worth investigating more. I think it's worth getting involved if that's something that interests you, because there's so many resources available to you.
Washington State, Vince, is a very militarized state because it is next to Alaska. the real hub of the Pacific Northwest. If anything came from Russia or Eastern Asia or something along those lines, Washington State's the first one to get it. When you hear of all of these UFO sightings that are happening up here in the Pacific Northwest, then you realize, in a combination of how militarized the West Coast really is, do you think people could be seeing military aircraft and just mistaking them for UFOs, or do you believe that people are truly seeing what they are seeing?
I think it's highly possible that a number of them, anytime you see a UFO, it's just that it's unidentified. It's something up in the sky that you don't know what it is, you can't explain. Whether it's an alien spacecraft or not, I think the Southwest actually provides a good model for us. You know, we've got a military base like Area 51, really close to where Roswell, New Mexico happened, pretty close to the Phoenix Lights of 1997. I think it's entirely plausible that some of what people are seeing has to be things that the government is in complete control over, the military is in complete control over. And for various reasons, they don't want us to know about it. That being said, I think there's a pretty good argument to be made that, you know, at one point, you know, maybe we did get control of, you know, some extraterrestrial technology. There was some reverse engineering that happened. You know, there's plenty of testimony from various whistleblowers, you know, people formerly part of, you know, the dark government co-ops that confirm a lot of this. It would be really hard to give a percentage on that, but yeah, I'm certain that a good amount of them are probably not extraterrestrial spacecraft, but maybe something we're using for defense or to go out and militarize the rest of the world.
Exactly. We're talking with Vince Ynzunza and Alex Sullivan tonight on Spaced Out Radio. They are from an online television show called Pacific North Weird. What's happening here on the West Coast from BC all the way down to California. If it's weird, they are going to cover it. We're going to get them to wait around until we get through the break here at the top of the hour. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back after this.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio on the Spreaker.com network.
Do you believe you've been in contact with extraterrestrials? Have you seen the Greys, the Mantis, or the Reptilians? I am Samantha Mullet, and on the second Tuesday of each month, you can listen and learn from my experiences with off-worlders on Spaced Out Radio's The ET Experience. With host Dave Scott, we'll sit down and chat about what's going on with our friends from other worlds. We'll also try to answer your questions, so please tune in on the second Tuesday of the month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners, for only $5 a month you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio. And we give it up to you guys, all the listeners, and the live listeners usually get something special and hang out in the chat room. And we love to have you. So we'll see you every Saturday night at 8 p.m. You know where.
If you're a fan of social media, you can follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where our archives are stored, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, on the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, if you're at Paranormal Forum, thank you for tuning in now for the second part of the show. And, of course, on Facebook, UFOria Chronicles and our SOR Space Travelers. You can join that group for free. It's facebook.com/groups/SOR Space Travelers. All one word. We do it every night. Thank you so much for being with us and taking part in this show. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking about the Pacific Northwest, otherwise known as Cascadia, if you include British Columbia in that one. And our guests tonight from the television show Pacific North Weird are Vince Ynzunza and Alex Sullivan. Vince, right before the break, we were talking about ufology and the history it has in Washington State. I would love for you to give my listeners a history lesson about what happened in 47.
1947, yeah, that was the beginning of the summer of the saucers. Most of the time when you look that up, the first thing you're going to find is the Roswell crash, 1947, New Mexico. 2 weeks before that, however, we had the Kenneth Arnold incident. June 24th, 1947, he flew out of the Chehalis airport, saw 9 flying crescent-shaped discs going around Mount Rainier. Later, he was interviewed and was asked, how can you describe the way those crafts flew? And he said, well, imagine you're skipping some saucers across the water. So immediately the newspaper reporter writes down like flying saucers. The next day, that word had entered the pop culture lexicon. The English language was changed forever. One of the lesser-known things, but I think equally important events, actually happened 3 days before the Kenneth Arnold incident. Maury Island incident. Harold Dahl was on his boat with his son and a friend and saw these 6 donut-shaped discs come down. One of them was having engine trouble, apparently, and blew up. The shrapnel came down, killed his dog. It left slag all over his boat. He docked it, went and told his family, and they kept quiet about it. But very next day, this figure shows up at his front door. It's a man wearing all black hat, black sunglasses. What we would know, is Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones as the Men in Black. This is documented and widely considered to be really the first instance of a Man in Black sighting. And so it's like these two very pivotal cases happening in Washington State, 1947, weeks before Roswell, were really the genesis of the Summer of the Saucers. That very same year in Portland, there hundreds of people reported seeing like about a dozen flying saucers just really flying over the city. So like it wasn't only located, or centralized in Washington. It was kind of this entire region just woke up and just started a flying saucer frenzy. It was kind of miraculous.
Why do you think that those stories in Washington State have never taken off, much like Roswell did with its crash? Because with that crash that happened in the Pacific Ocean there, right along the harbors, what I recall from hearing that story before is they actually took some of those ET parts in a B-24, and it actually crashed as well, and the government apparently lost those parts to that UFO that were on that plane as well.
Oh yeah, that's correct. J. Edgar Hoover had sent two investigators, to Des Moines, Washington, to investigate Harold Dahl's claims. And yeah, they got some slag from the crash and got on their plane and ended up crashing along the Washington-Oregon border. So there was definitely a lot of tragedy to that. I think the thing that really makes Roswell stand out, far beyond anything that happened prior to it in Washington or Oregon, is almost a perfect storm of storytelling. You've got reports of actual dead alien bodies, strewn out across the desert. You've got the government immediately coming in and giving like the smoke screen, of like, oh, it was a weather balloon or a swamp gas or something. You have people within the military deciding to break rank and go out and spill the truth and report what they really saw. Just within such a short amount of time, it was almost a microcosm of the classic UFO cover-up scenario. And it really just, the confluence of events was just too perfect. And I think there was almost like a Hollywood quality to it, and which is great. Roswell's a great story, and, like whatever happened there is very important. But I think it was just the perfection of what happened there, I think, really makes it stand out above and beyond everything else.
On Pacific North Weird, your show, which is the topic for tonight, Vince, do you like covering these stories, or do you like more going into the folklore and the legends that are around the state that maybe people have forgotten about?
It's hard to pick a favorite. A lot of the things that we've covered before are certainly the big guns of ufology or the Sasquatch world. We've covered Kenneth Arnold and the Maury Island incident. I say personally, I actually get a little bit more enjoyment in uncovering something that's not already like a household topic or something that's not already widely known amongst people who follow paranormal events. And sometimes those things are actually connected to some of the better known things. Like, for instance, our video that we did on the Maury Island incident, the video is actually about this event, this semi-secret society event by the Maury Island Historical Society that they do every year called Burning Saucer. And they get out on this, what's the word, this homeowners association private dock that overlooks Maury Island. And they kind of have this semi-tongue-in-cheek retelling of the Maury Island incident story. And it all coalesces into this ritual burning of this 4-foot circumference wide flying saucer that they have suspended above this fire pit. And so, like, of course, a lot of people know about the Maury Island incident story, but, like, when you watch the video, it actually becomes about this semi-secret society event that these people put on every year. And it brings me, like, so much joy to kind of, like, be the person to introduce this topic or that event to the world. So, yeah, I really love just finding the odd little things, that maybe not a lot of people know about, and making a document of that.
Alex, do you enjoy the main topics that everybody wants to hear of, like Bigfoot, like the UFOs, or do you like finding the other mysteries that surround the Pacific Northwest a little bit more intriguing?
I do find things that are a little more obscure, more intriguing. Like, Bigfoot is great. He's our local cryptid that's kind of widely accepted as the mascot of the Northwest. But there are also just strange stories of hyper-local cryptids that, one person saw one time. Like Bat Squatch is a favorite of mine, which was supposedly sighted near Mount St. Helens. And just these super local legends or things that are not quite as mainstream really appeal to me. I just kind of want to bring out these things that marinate in small towns or people might not be familiar with, or just strange stories that somebody heard somebody else tell about a place. That's really fascinating to me, and I think a lot of people would love to hear more about that, yeah.
Well, let's go there right now. Let's get into some Bigfoot, because there's a story coming around, and it's been going around for a couple of weeks. On May 18th of this month, it was the 36th anniversary of Mount St. Helens, which was just a horrific tragedy for the state of Washington, Oregon. Over 40 people lost their lives there. But in the Bigfoot conspiracy, there was also a lot of chatter in regards to Ape Mountain, and that there were Army Chinook helicopters that were looking for bodies of people and looking for people who were stranded, who were actually picking up dead and almost dead, critically injured Bigfoot from this washout. What did you ever think about that, Alex?
Well, to be honest, I hadn't really heard about it recently. We should probably ask this to Vince because he's done a little more research lately about it. But there is definitely a lot going on there. I've heard that there was like a rescue retrieval event for Bigfoot at Mount St. Helens. But let's ask Vince because I haven't really looked into it as much.
All right, Vince, let's go with you on this one. Have you ever looked into that little conspiracy about Bigfoot around Mount St. Helens?
Yeah. Just recently, I heard some of the same stories that you're talking about. People, eyewitness testimonies of like these charred corpses or a half-dead Sasquatch being discovered in there. And I read a few articles, and one of the most interesting things that really popped out to me was that apparently on Mount St. Helens somewhere there is a gravestone memorial set up to Sasquatch, kind of like memorializing the death of Sasquatch there. The source that I read didn't reveal where it was from, where exactly it could be found on St. Helens, but that is something we would definitely like to find. We would love to get up there and film that and, just kind of witness that for ourselves. I was recently reading a little bit on Portland Bigfoot researcher Tom Powell had a lot to say just about his recollections of hearing really just the same things that we're all talking about. People just seeing helicopters go down, picking up bodies, hearing maybe secondhand stories from their friends or something. Other than that, it's been really hard to find anything concrete about them finding, Sasquatch bodies. It would make a lot of sense to me that, there would have to be some of the Bigfoot community who perished that day. We have there's such a rich connection between Bigfoot and Mount St. Helens, going back to the 1924 Ape Canyon incident. The gold miners, Fred Beck and some friends, they report seeing these hairy men kind of harassing them out on the mountain. They take some shots with their rifles at them, and then later that night, things attack from outside. Boulders are thrown down, and so I would think there would have to be some casualties of this being on that mountain. If anyone out there does know about this Sasquatch tombstone up on St. Helens, please let us know. We'd really like to find that.
I'm going to look that up. I got a lot of Bigfoot friends on this show, and that is something that I think would be very, very intriguing. I want to get into Ape Canyon here for a little bit as we talk Bigfoot, because this is so intriguing. Before St. Helens, you mentioned it a little bit ago, that in the 20s, 30s, there was a group of hunters who were out there looking for deer, moose, elk, bear, whatever they could pretty much kill, and they came across Sasquatch, and they said in the legend that they shot one. Well, it came back tenfold on them. I would love for you to tell that story. Yeah, so the story basically goes that there's a group of hunters out there. They were doing what they normally did. They went out and enjoyed the wilderness and hunted. And early on in the day, they started to notice there was something else out there with them. There was this hairy creature kind of watching them from a distance. They were obviously very frightened, and took some shots. And one of the creatures lunged at them, kind of like made some intimidating movements. They got obviously very frightened and decided they were going to leave home the next day. Before that could happen, they were in their cabin, and their story really is only told through what they heard. There were no windows in the cabin, but from what they could tell, there was a good number of these entities outside of their cabin throwing rocks at it, pounding on the walls. At one point, one of the arms reached in and grabbed one of their shotguns. They managed to fire at it, and it went away. Very next day, they go out and they manage to escape. They get out. One thing I find really interesting about the story that doesn't get reported a lot, though, is that Fred Beck, the guy who, I guess, carried the story further than anyone else and had the most notoriety with it, he was one of the very first people in I guess, recorded Sasquatch, in the recorded Sasquatch history, to make the assumption or the claim that there might be a supernatural element to Bigfoot. He was reported as saying that they are obviously like from another world, that there's something supernatural about them. That part gets left off a whole lot, and I'm not sure why, but I think it's one of the more interesting aspects of that. See, I am in full agreement with that. I had a Bigfoot experience a couple of years ago where I saw two of the creatures that were very much within 100 feet of me. And I'll never forget that size when you see something that up close and personal. And the second one, the bigger one, was about 85 feet away from me. It absolutely mystified me, and I'm so thankful that I got that sighting. I never felt fear or anything like that. But when you bring up the fact that there is maybe something a little bit more mystical with Bigfoot, I've had a lot of information from researchers on this show that look beyond the science, who believe there is something to that. In my own experience, 4 days after the sighting, this happened on a friend's property, when we were walking around their house, we felt like we were being followed. And two of us, of the four, when we looked back to see if anything was following us, we actually saw a pixelation standing about 8 to 10 feet high beside this cherry tree. It was clear as day, much like television pixelation looks. The other two couldn't see it. But as we continued walking along the side of their house, about another 20 seconds later, that's when we heard the roar of the creature. And I'll tell you, that is scary. So on this show, we've heard about that pixelation before, not just from me. We've heard about people setting up trail cams and not being able to get a photo, or their camera's batteries die, or they get some sort of weird orbed white lights type streaks along their camera where the Bigfoot should be. Are you getting a lot of those reports as well when you hear of the supernatural powers of Bigfoot there?
I would say in actually the event that originally inspired us to create this show, when we first went to the Menemin's UFO Festival, one of the keynote speakers was Kawani Lapsaritis, and he's the author of the great book, The Psychic Sasquatch, and like the connection to the UFO phenomenon. And that was the crux of his entire speech, that these entities, he calls the forest people or the ancient ones, that they're actually transdimensional. They're able to walk through the veil and communicate with whomever they want to and be seen by whomever they want to. And a lot of what your testimony right there that you told me about how not everyone could see the creature in front of you, and that there was like a pixelation quality to it, that completely lines up with everything that Kawani was saying that first day that we saw him. Like, I would imagine like the pixelation might be maybe an effect of this creature maybe being in between the two dimensions or between the two worlds. I'm not sure, but he listening to Kawani that first UFO festival, that was such like a pivotal moment for both of us, I think, where we really saw that there was a whole lot more to some of these topics than we had guessed before. Prior to this, we understood Sasquatch as, kind of the way a lot of people colloquially do. It's this undiscovered great ape, this North American primate, living out in the Olympic National Forest. Hearing Kawani talk, very, very cogently and clearly that, maybe there's a bit more to the mystery, really excited us, and kind of was a great inspiration for the creation of the show.
Alex, I want to bring you in here and your topic on Bigfoot here. Are you surprised with the amount of people who spend time outdoors here in the Pacific Northwest that there isn't more reported Bigfoot sightings?
Part of me is a little surprised, but part of me thinks that, I don't know, there's such a stigma attached to explaining people's, paranormal experiences, that I guess I do understand on some level that the strange thing is, when you look at the number of reportings or the things that make the media attention, it's not that much. But when you actually talk to people, you meet with a group of 5 people, and you'll find at least somebody who's seen something, Bigfoot related or UFO related or ghost related. And it just seems strange to me that people are afraid to kind of come forward with their stories. But I think people are out there experiencing things, but like all of us, we kind of second guess ourselves and think, try to rationalize things even if they're inherently irrational. And that's probably why the numbers aren't as much as they probably should be, honestly. But I don't know. I think there's a certain amount of openness that you need to be able to even recognize what's happening if it's happening to you. But I think, I don't know, there's a lot of people going outdoors, but I'm not sure that they're all ready to be experiencers, you know what I mean?
No, I hear you there. Do you think, though, with as 24/7, Alex, that Seattle and the surrounding areas have become due to the tech boom that happened there and then continued right down to California? Do you think people have just tuned out with that, with what is happening around, and maybe they fear, because of the positions they're in, the ridicule, the possibility of losing their job or something along those lines, that it's just better to stay quiet?
I think there's definitely that kind of pressure. but I also think there's kind of a countercurrent of people who might be a little younger or a little more engaged that they're kind of normalizing this experience. Like among my peer group, I feel like almost all my friends, everyone I know is excited about the idea of there being paranormal phenomenon, interested in hearing about it, and not judgmental in the same way that maybe previous generations would be if you said, oh, I've had this experience that was unexplainable. They might be written off as like an insane person or a kook in previous generations. But I think like the people growing up now who are my age are very kind of willing to keep their mind open to things. So it makes me quite optimistic about the future.
Yeah, me too. How about yourself, Vince? I'm curious to get your opinion on that. Do you think that society, especially on the West Coast, as most of the population is sucked against the ocean wall, that there is too much going on and too much at stake for people to actually come forward, whether it's a Bigfoot sighting, whether it's a UFO sighting, or something weird? Do you think the repercussions are a little bit too blatant?
You know, I think a lot of people might be under that impression, and that might prevent a lot of people from speaking out. I think it might be a combination of that with maybe people's families, you know, who you know may have a certain philosophical or religious tradition, you know, and then when you mention something that doesn't fit into that, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Thanksgiving dinner isn't that comfortable. In terms of repercussions from employment, personally, I work for Washington State government. I'm not going to say which agency, but, you know, I've always been completely open about, you know, what I do on my off time and, like, the weirdo videos I make and the things I'm interested in. And, you know, I find that actually a number of my higher-ups and supervisors have seen something themselves, that they've experienced something or that they know somebody who's experienced something. I think a lot of people are afraid of repercussions. I don't think it's always founded, though. I think a lot more people than you would imagine have seen something or believe that something is out there. And a lot of times they hold very supervisal positions.
Absolutely. Vince, Alex, I'm going to get you to hold on here as we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. Our guests tonight are Alex Sullivan and Vince Ynzunza from Pacific North Weird. We're going to get to it tonight. More Bigfoot, more weird stories like the haunted tunnels of Seattle. A little bit of D.B. Cooper mixed in as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Fairies, Bigfoot, dogmen, trolls, goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
Would you like to expand your clientele? Have you ever thought of online radio advertising? Check out spacedoutradio.com to get your name out there. Our listeners support those who advertise with us, so why not give it a try? We have the most competitive advertising prices out there. Just click on the advertising tab on spacedoutradio.com and contact us today.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up, enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I don't want to take a thing from you, I just want to feel like something real with you.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in. Always a pleasure to be with you live as we do this thing 7 days a week, right here at spacedoutradio.com and on Spreaker. If you're tuning in on the SHR Media Network, we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you to all the listeners taking part in the chat rooms on Paranormal Forum, at Spaced Out Radio's chat room on Spreaker, at Euphoria Chronicles on Facebook, as well as the SOR Space Travelers. I'm trying to hold back a sneeze here, so I do apologize as I try and hold it back. I think I got it. I think we're going to be able to hold off on this one. Anyhow, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. That's where we hide our archives. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Once again, from Pacific North Weird, we bring in Vince and Alexandra to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. You guys are going to be with us. You're going to be troopers. You're coming right to the end with us tonight.
All the way to the end till the wheels fall off and burn.
Nice.
We're committed.
I do have a comment in regards in the in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, in regards to mermaids on the West Coast. Have you ever tracked down anything on mermaids?
I'd say the closest thing we have to a mermaid that we know about is Jake the Alligator Man. There's this wonderful little town called Long Beach, Washington, and there's this establishment there called Marsha's Free Museum. You go in there and not only can you buy a bunch of cool Bigfoot T-shirts and little weirdo eccentric knickknacks, but it's also a active museum. You find bowls made of human flesh, and actual shrunken heads and stuff. But their main treasure is this thing called Jake the Alligator Man. Jake got notorious, I believe, in the 90s on the cover of the Weekly World News, and it's this purported mummified, half-human, kind of half, alligator thing at the end that has kind of become, I'd say next to Sasquatch, kind of Washington's main cryptid mascot. it's always kind of presented in a tongue-in-cheek sort of way. There's plenty, like the official Jake the Alligator Man Facebook page, for instance. It purports to be Jake running the Facebook page, and he always talks about how beautiful he is. And there's a Bride of Jake contest, so these women dress up as kind of weird cryptid creations and vie to be Jake's bride for the year, until the next competition happens. Not exactly a mermaid, but definitely kind of, a half human, half non-human thing. In terms of actual mermaids, I haven't heard of a whole lot. I'd love to know if anyone knows about any out there, though.
I know Captain George Vancouver and his crew, when they discovered, well, obviously Vancouver, British Columbia, there was said to be mermaids seen around Stanley Park, and in fact there is a statue attributed to that, so that might be something you want to look up next time you cross the border to film here in British Columbia.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I do want to get into the whole D.B. Cooper saga in Oregon. This one is amazing to me, and the funny part about it is, guys, I have had so much trouble trying to book someone onto this show that'll come on and talk D.B. Cooper. It seems like people have gone almost quiet on this. Well, not everybody, but certain people. Alex, have you guys ever investigated the D.B. Cooper case?
We haven't done a deep investigation. We did do our Christmas special, which was kind of a fun, humorous, anecdotal reinterpretation of A Christmas Carol based on D.B. Cooper. So we are familiar with the general story. Just personally, I know of people who live in my hometown who have stated, oh yeah, we went in the woods and found a big wad of money that we assumed might have been from D.B. Cooper, and we just didn't say anything and took the money. So there's a lot of local folklore that I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about, and I don't even know if researchers have heard about. I'm not quite sure who's the most up-to-date researcher. Maybe Vince knows.
There is an author, local author, who has done some really good research on it. The name right now is really escaping me. I know his name is Galen. Galen something. I hope that's half helpful to you. But yeah, D.B. Cooper has definitely been something that's in our sights, to do something. And the more videos that we've done, we've gotten way more professional on them, so it takes a bit longer to get videos out, because there's a much higher production quality and everything. But I do foresee us doing a pretty in-depth D.B. Cooper episode, definitely this year. Going back to what Alex said about the Christmas special, though, that was a whole lot of fun. We kind of reinterpreted the D.B. Cooper story, so it's kind of a retelling of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, where D.B. Cooper's kind of the Scrooge character, and he hijacks Santa's sleigh, and much like he hijacked the plane, and kind of steals Christmas from the Northwest, and he parachutes down into the forest outside of Ariel, Washington, where he's confronted by 4 ghosts, who have Northwest connections. John Torno, the Wild Man of Wainuchi, Bigfoot, Francis Farmer, and then later just a death figure. So we definitely introduced D.B. Cooper, the concept of that legend to the Pacific Northwest canon. But yeah, there's definitely a much more exhaustive, well-rounded video that we'll be doing in the future on that. And I do have to mention our sound guy, audio technician, Chris Brown, is a spitting image of D.B. Cooper. You put him into a black suit with a white shirt and a tie and some sunglasses, and he looks just like D.B. Cooper. It's rather incredible.
Oh, that's weird. That is totally weird. When you go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say it was almost like magic when he was introduced to our show. I had known him from college classes I had taken and hadn't spoken to him in a few years, and he offered to do some audio services for us, and then he showed up one day wearing sunglasses. I'm just like, holy crap, you are D.B. Cooper. This is perfect. So weird things like that happen to us.
When you look at the legend of D.B. Cooper and what happened there, it's really amazing how after all this time, yes, there have been people come out and say, I was D.B. Cooper. There's always the wannabes out there. But it's amazing after all this time that technically he's still a fugitive on the run.
Yeah, and it's so strange. Like most people don't get away with that. Most people, are caught, within, a relatively short amount of time. Or, after they've passed away, the FBI or the government, figures out who they were. But the fact that this, it's not a paranormal story. Like, there's no question that whether it happened or not, like, this did happen. There was a man who hijacked a plane, gave a false alias, stole a bunch of money, parachuted out, and no one knows what happened to him or who it was. So yeah, just on a history of American crime level, it's quite a miraculous tale.
Vince, how old would D.B. Cooper be now?
I believe when it happened, like 1972, I believe, he was described as being a late 30s, early 40s male. So I have to say he'd probably be in his early 80s if that were the case, if he were even still alive. Yeah.
And for people who are unfamiliar with the story, I would love it if you took a couple of moments here to just break down what happened.
Yeah, okay, so there was a man who showed up on a flight, I believe from, I might make sure I get my facts right here, I believe from Seattle to Oregon, or vice versa. But during the flight, he calmly hands the stewardess a letter saying, I have explosives on me, and I have a ransom demand. And the plane circled the airport for a while, and FBI got notified. It ended up landing. He let out all of the hostages except for the pilot, and was given a briefcase full of money and a parachute. The plane takes off again, somewhere over the vicinity of Ariel, Washington, which is close to the Oregon border of Washington. He parachutes out, and there was just this huge manhunt. It was the biggest thing in the news of the day. One curious fact that I always kind of appreciated about the case was we know this person as D.B. Cooper. The alias he actually gave to that he wrote down, on his ransom note was Dan Cooper. Somewhere along the way, it got misinterpreted and got reported as D.B. Cooper. The FBI chose not to correct this error in order to weed out the hoaxers who would call in. So if somebody would call in and was like, oh, I know a guy who calls himself D.B. Cooper, they would know that they're full of rubbish, so.
And yet they found the parachute, they found a bunch of money strewn around the forest, so obviously he didn't get away with all the money that he actually wanted, yet there's no body, there's no trace of him. So it would have to really mean that he must have had a sidekick or a partner in crime on the ground following the plane or knowing where he was going to jump out, because this scheme is very elaborate.
Yeah, it seems so elaborate and almost so insurmountable that you would have to have, it couldn't be a one-man mission. You'd have to have somebody on the ground who was ready to pick you up, or knew what was going on, or was going to help you launder the money or hide out for a few months, while the FBI searched everywhere. I'd say that's very likely what happened. Also the forests of the Northwest are very dense. If it's this difficult to find a Sasquatch, it would be pretty hard to find one guy, dressed as a man in black, out there. We had actually at one point I started to write a script for like I wanted to do a Pacific Northwest movie, and I was trying to think, like, what sort of Pacific Northwest lore can I draw upon? And I had this idea, like, what if D.B. Cooper actually got adopted by a family of Sasquatch out there? And I started to write down the synopsis for this movie, and then I decided, oh, maybe I should look this up. And there's actually already a movie called D.B. Cooper versus the Sasquatch. It's already out there.
But the fact that he chose a 727, I believe, to jump out of, because they had the back door that would drop down that he could jump out of. I mean, this was just so elaborate and so everything. I mean, the big question is, did he survive the jump? That is the multi-million-dollar question. He wasn't found near the parachute, so you have to wonder, did the parachute actually fall off of him? Was he not strapped in properly? Did he actually make it? What's your take on that?
My take, if I were waging a bet, I would imagine whoever this guy was had it pretty planned out, but there were so many factors he couldn't account for, and that he probably met his end on the way down, and that the parachute probably disconnected from him. I mean, jumping out at the level he was at the time of year, it was like very, very cold out, and it would. From what I've read, a lot of skydiving experts have said it would be almost a suicide mission to do what he did. On the other hand, maybe he had some training. Maybe he was military. Maybe he actually really did know what he was doing. My money's on that he met his fate that night, and we just haven't found the body yet.
Alexander, what is your take on the D.B. Cooper? Do you think he survived, or do you think he met his fate that night?
I don't know, and I don't know enough to really postulate, but I don't know. To me, it's less important whether or not he made it, and more interesting just that somebody could get away with it as far as it went. And just the fact that it's never been solved, there's never been any conclusive evidence to determine who he was. And to me, that's almost more important at this point, especially since it's been so long. There's no resolution to this case. So it's almost turning into its own kind of folklore in a way. Like, it has become this sort of local legend of this person who we know in actuality did what he did, but also there's this mystery to it that we can't really explain, and we can't really even speculate, really, because we don't know what happened, and we don't have all the evidence for it. So I'm not sure. He probably did die on his way down, or he got away with it, and we'll probably never know the answer, but I'm not sure if that's the most important thing about the story in a way.
Are there a lot of people, Alex, who still travel to Ariel, Washington to maybe try and find him, or go out in the mountains to try and find evidence? Is it still quite a tourist attraction around there, is what I'm saying?
I feel like it's died down quite a bit. I feel like it was such a media sensation at the time, and everybody was interested for a brief period of time. And it's totally kind of gone off the radar, except as sort of a pop culture reference. Like, oh yeah, D.B. Cooper, that's that guy who did that crazy thing with the parachute. There are a few investigators who are seriously, trying to come up with names, trying to investigate who it could have been based on all the information available. But I think we're kind of at the point where it's transferring to a sort of legend status.
Hey, Vince, I got a question for you. We're going to jump back into the Bigfoot because this is my fault. I missed Claudia's question from the SOR Space Travelers. She was wondering if you believe Bigfoot knows how to camouflage itself into the surroundings, and because it seems like it cloaks, like a moth had to change colors because the tree's colors changed. So do you think Bigfoot is along the same way, that it could cloak itself?
I think it's entirely possible that it can clip itself. I think what I've heard that is even more interesting to me is that it seems to be completely aware that we are looking for it, that we are trying to capture prints or capture video footage of it. And you find I'm just recently reading a book by Tom Powell called The Locals, and he postulates that it seems that the Sasquatch creature is completely aware if people have cameras set up, for instance, where on maybe around a certain ranch or homestead where there's documented, eyewitness testimony of Sasquatch activity happening, almost every night. They bring out some cameras and actually set up something to document it. And it seems like later they find tracks that are completely, circling and not going down the normal route it would go at, because they're aware that we're trying to capture concrete evidence of it. I'm not really sure what that means. I think it's interesting. I think back to the Skookum Cast incident down in the Skookum Forest region of southern Washington. The BFRO, Bigfoot Research Organization, they had set up an expedition to kind of get some Sasquatch evidence, and they had this idea let's set up some fruit in this middle of this wet mud patch, something that would really capture some footprints. And later that night they discovered that the fruit was gone, but there was this huge what's been described as this imprint of a large primate body reaching, for the middle of the mud patch, which had the fruit, kind of inferring, that the Squatch didn't want its footprints there, that it made an effort with the full knowledge that we're trying to get evidence to, try to get the fruit, but in a way that wouldn't leave a lot of concrete evidence to it. Skookum Cast itself is a really fascinating, interesting case. It's been heavily researched and documented by people like Grover Krantz, the WSU professor, who is very, very big in the Bigfoot community in terms of adding some real scientific, rigorous, investigative practices to finding out what this creature is. But yeah, I'd say it's probably a bit more than being able to camouflage itself. I think it's just intelligently aware that we're out there looking for it. And maybe it's not the dumb ape that a lot of people think it is.
Oh, I'm a firm believer that Sasquatch sees us well before we see it. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer on that part. And they are much more able to figure us out before we can even get a sniff, no pun intended, of where they are. I do want to get into some paranormal tonight, because with you guys we can talk literally about everything. And we're going to head to your neck of the woods here, Alex, in the Emerald City of Seattle. And sure. Have you ever been underground?
No, I have not done the actual underground tour, but we are definitely going to do an episode on it. But we do have this great underground system in Seattle where basically previous eras of the city were underground and have kind of remained there and built over. And there's a great ghost tour I've heard that goes through this underground area, mostly around Pioneer Square. And there's supposed to be a lot of paranormal activity there. There's supposedly a morgue in downtown Seattle that's highly paranormal, to the point where local businesses have space they can't occupy because it's literally untenable due to poltergeist activity. And Seattle has a great history full of just our old buildings, old things that are there that have led to this kind of paranormal activity. There's also Port Townsend in Washington, which is kind of a hub of ghost activity. They have some kind of military base area that I know has a lot of activity, as well as several bed and breakfasts that are known for their ghost activity. And I know that in Victoria and Vancouver, there's a lot of ghost activity up north, too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have a lot up here. But sticking with the Seattle area, when you look back on history, what makes that area so haunted? Was it the fact that there were, much like British Columbia here, we had a lot of immigrants come in to help really build the country? Was it because it's always been a fishing port and there's always tales from the sea and people being stowed away, number one, or number two, much like the Shanghai tunnels in Portland, where they end up having to go and steal people, literally, to get them to work on ships. And if you didn't want to work, well, you got a one-way ticket overboard. Was it much like that with Seattle's history as well?
I think it probably is similar to that. Seattle has a history of being sort of this working-class area that had a lot of industry building up very quickly. And that seems to be, I don't know if there are any cases of them being shanghaied exactly like in Portland, which is also very interesting, that history involved with a lot of hauntings they experience. But I think the location to the water definitely has something to do with it. It seems to be sort of, perhaps it's the influx of just new people coming constantly, the sort of anonymity that leads to these stories being told of people who aren't from around here that kind of lead to the folklore around ghost hunting, ghosts in general. I believe that Pioneer Square is a major area where a lot of this has happened. I'm not sure. Does Vince know any more about Seattle ghosts?
I'm a big fan of the Princess Angeline legend. She was the daughter of Chief Seattle, and really one of the last. She, along with her father, kind of considered to be the bridge between the old Native American ways and the white settlers really completely consuming and kind of winning the region, taking it over. And, after much of Seattle was being built up, she kind of remained there, as herself, and was considered to be a very, very beautiful woman at the time, and was given the nickname Princess Angeline. And to this day, people still see this figure of this elderly Native American woman sitting down cross-legged somewhere within Pike Place Market. They see her for a moment, they turn around and look back, and she's gone. And it's happened so often that you can talk to a lot of the merchants there at the market, and they know exactly who you're talking about. Oh, it's Angeline. She's back again. Sometimes some people have even reported seeing her stepping onto the ferry, which actually docks just behind Pike Place Market that heads off to Bremerton or any of the islands in the area. They never see her get off the ferry, though. Just get on it.
Alex and sorry, my eyes are killing me here. Vince, I'm going to get you guys to hold on here for a few moments as we are going to take our break at the top of the hour. We're talking with Vince and Alex from Pacific North Weird here on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We're going to hop out after hour number 2, hour number 3 with our guests coming up right after this.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com.
Well, welcome back for the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Always a pleasure to be broadcasting to you live as we hit hour number 3. Thank you for listening in. If you're on the SHR Media Network, if you're on Paranormal Forum checking in, if you're in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, Euphoria Chronicles on Facebook, or part of the SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook, always a pleasure to be with you guys. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going to have a little bit of a birthday celebration for old Davey here, as it is the 43rd anniversary of the birth of myself. I don't remember the day very well, but we're going to get into it tomorrow night. Going to have a bunch of friends popping by from all different genres. And you, the listener, call on in. Tell us some stories. Paranormal, UFOs, Bigfoot, doesn't really matter. Let's just have a good old party tomorrow night. We're going to have some cold beers here as well. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at Dave Scott SOR, on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our archives are stored on YouTube. That's Spaced Out Radio Show. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Talking Pacific North Weird tonight with Vince and Alex from the title show, Pacific North Weird. Vince, thank you so much. Alex, you as well. Pleasure to have you on for the full 3 hours tonight.
We're having a great time. Thank you.
I got a couple questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and Paranormal Forum for you. Vince, we'll start off with you. This comes from Claudia. When you talk to Native Americans regarding UFOs and ETs and what they have seen, have any of them ever discussed with you about the Star Nations and passed on their incredible stories to you?
Yes, actually, in our fourth full-length episode titled The UFO Cop, we speak to a man named Brian, and he kind of lays out the kind of a brief explanation of the First Nations and Turtle Island's relationship with the Star Nation, and goes in a bit on how there was like a, I guess, intermarriage. I guess kind of like a intermingling that happened amongst some star people and some human figures, and that kind of helped to create maybe some of the stranger things in this area. But yeah, no, it's always been just a very beautiful story for me, and I love hearing it over and over again. It's always just a little bit different color to it every time someone different explains it to me.
Do you think that we have to take the First Nation stories a little bit more seriously when it comes to the legends and lore? Do you think it's a real forgotten science, if we can use that word, Vince?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're dealing with, and the reason why these stories deserve the utmost respect, is that we're hearing them from a culture that they're not dysfunctional with their relationship with these phenomenon. They a long time ago accepted it as just part of the natural course of things. To them, it's not supernatural. It's just the way the world works. And what we've noticed is, once white settlers came to this continent, they started to maybe experience some very similar things, some things that lined up completely with various First Nations oral history and folklore. I think there's a lot we can learn in how they live with this phenomenon. They don't live around it. They don't resist it. There's something really beautiful about the relationship there that I think we can take a lot from.
A lot of First Nations tribes around North America have always talked about the little people that seem to have villages in the forests and in dense areas where they're pretty much inhabitable by everyone else. Are there a lot of stories from First Nations in the Pacific Northwest that you've heard about who have talked about the little people? Because it seems like a lot of these legends and lores regarding them are kept very quiet because they're said to be very mischievous little people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like tricksters, I would imagine. Personally, I haven't come across very many stories at all about the little people in reference to First Nation stories. Every single time we go out and decide to create a new episode or explore a new topic, we realize that there's just so much more that we don't know about yet, and I think that's a lot of what kind of really makes our show and doing the show so fresh and vibrant all the time. There's some things that we just don't know a whole lot about. I guess the little people are one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Would you ever mess with them? Would you ever go out into the forest with Pacific North Weird's cameras and go looking for them?
Absolutely.
Are you not
afraid?
afraid?
Yeah, I'm game.
Are you not afraid of the retribution?
If we were with the right people and we trusted the guide that we were with, we've gone out and explored many unusual things, and really the only retribution we ever receive are from fellow human beings. Maybe people who don't like us making a video about a particular subject or adding, some of our trademark dark humor to a particular topic. I won't know if it's something I shouldn't do until I do it. I guess until it's too late. But there's just too much curiosity and excitement I have for exploring these things.
I'm not sure if I would go there yet. I have a friend of mine who is from a First Nation here in British Columbia, and he had asked me if I had ever heard of the Little People, because we had talked a lot about Bigfoot, and his brother, who lives in a cabin way up in the mountains, actually during the summer will have a family of Bigfoot that comes and visits him at his cabin. They don't come inside for coffee or anything. I don't want to make it sound like that, but there has been times where he's actually been taken out of his home and laid by the fire pit where the Bigfoot have surrounded him. He's never felt any danger or anything like that, because there is a respect factor, and it's the area where their reservation is very, very active with Bigfoot sightings, which is weird because I fish along that area during the fall when the salmon are running. Anyways, long story short, a number of years ago, his uncle was up climbing a mountain called Teapot Mountain, and he was looking for hunting game and signs how the hunt was going to go for when the season opened. And he was quite high up on the mountain, almost 3/4 of the way up, when he came across a little village. And he immediately raced back down the hill because he was so afraid of the retribution that the Little People would cause, because he did see a couple. They were said to be between 12 and 18 inches tall, and it really, really scared them, because at that time his uncle had only heard the legend of them but had never really seen them.
Right. Well, yeah, that sounds really, really interesting. It's something I guess I'm definitely going to have to do some research on it and kind of read up and see what I can find out about this phenomenon before I could ever decide if I were to document it in any way. But yeah, you definitely piqued my interest there.
When you're going into these stories to figure out these little legends and stories and folklore, do you, Vince, or Al, we'll start with you, Vince, on this one. Do you go and look into the safety aspect if this creature or this story has a devilish side to it? Is that, I know it's intriguing because you want to get the story, and the chances of something happening are very slim, but there is always that extraordinary part where, you know what, you may have squeezed too many lemons and got a little bit of that, that juice in your eye and, really screwed things up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. Definitely, I mean, safety is definitely always an issue, especially if we're going to go out into the wilderness, out into a world that we don't know a whole lot about. One of the main core philosophies of our show, one of the ways we've always done it, is our shows are often about the people who are interested in this thing, or the people who have stories to tell. We've to this date, maybe have gone out on one major Sasquatch expedition to go out and film. We've gone on several ghost expeditions to like haunted places to explore. Each of those times that we do that, we're always with people who know a whole lot about the subject matter and are very well trained and experienced in doing that. We work with a man named Tyler Bounds, former outdoor technician on the Animal Planet show Finding Bigfoot. He's our resident Bigfoot expert. So like when we go out to look for Sasquatch, we are with a guy who has done this hundreds of times and really knows about the safety culture and really knows how to do it effectively, get an interesting shot, but also make sure everyone gets back to their tent or their car at the end of the night. Same thing when we go out, on some spirit trips, to look for ghosts, where we have our kind of a resident ghost investigator, shaman, Marcus McCoy, who lives in Olympia in the same town that I do. And he's devoted his entire life really to investigating this phenomenon. He understands innately how to protect yourself from maybe less than chivalrous entities out there. So we never dive in head first without having some research or like having some person with us who really knows what they're doing. That's always a tantamount ideal for us.
And Alex, safety is number one, no matter where you're shooting, whether you're shooting in someone's home or whether you are shooting out into the wilderness looking for BETs, or if you go down to the DB Cooper landing site to try and figure out what's going on there later on this year for that filming, you really have to worry about the safety, right?
It is. It's a concern. We definitely always try to think of, we're not going to put ourselves in a situation where we're going to expose ourselves to anything that will potentially be an obvious harmful situation. But like Jen said, yeah, we do have a lot of people. We've kind of grown into this sphere of influence where we meet a lot of people who are great at what they do, and I've never felt concerned about my safety based on what we're doing, because I feel like we have enough support where everybody who's involved in the project knows enough about the situation, knows enough about the potential safety issues and how to counteract them, that I have never been too concerned about my own personal safety. Though I do know there is a certain, as Marcus has said, there's a certain amount of spiritual hygiene you need to be able to encounter things that are perhaps out of the ordinary. And I think that's true of everybody, just kind of staying grounded and drawing a line in the sand of what is acceptable for you and what is not, and cutting out any kind of spiritual or, paranormal influences that are not wanted is definitely very important if you go into this line of investigation.
Alex, let's stick with you here for a moment, because I really want to get into Mel's Hole.
Yes, let's talk about Mel's Hole.
Tell us the legend of Mel's Hole.
So Mel's Hole is kind of a 90s Art Bell coast-to-coast era legend where this man living near Ellensburg, Washington, called in about the supposed hole in his backyard where people had been tossing trash for dozens of years, as long as anyone could remember. But the hole had never become full, or nobody had ever seen trash pile up. So this man, supposedly named Mel, became intrigued about exactly how deep this hole is and what exactly could cause it to have never filled up. So apparently he did some experimenting regarding using string on a fishing pole to try to find the bottom of this hole, and the line just kept running out. And this became kind of a thing on the radio show where people were calling in and saying that it wasn't necessarily, the fishing line could have had its own weight, had made it stop catching. And then this person, Mel, claims that the government came in and shut down his property due to his disclosure about Mel's Hole. So I don't know, it's just a super fascinating sort of local legend that we have, though it is weird because I have looked at the Google Maps for the area, and there is kind of a whited out area near Ellensburg, Washington, that there's no real explanation for. So I just think it's a little fascinating bit of lore. I don't know if Vince has anything to contribute on top of that.
Only that there was that aspect of the story where he talked about tossing his dead dog into the hole at one point, or that his neighbor had tossed his dog into the hole, his dead dog, and I guess claimed like weeks later the dog was alive again and kind of running around the forest, and he swears, to his dying day that somehow this magical hole resurrected his beloved dog. So just plenty of just really strange things connecting this local legend.
Now, one of the things I know about this legend is that it's still not proven to a lot of people if Mel Waters or the hole really exist. There's still some big debate on that.
There's been investigations to find out if Mel Waters is even a real person, and that really hasn't been proven to anyone's satisfaction. It's really mired just in a lot of weirdness. I think that story is, on a personal level, just very important to me because one of the things that as a child that really helped mature my interest in the paranormal was listening to the original Art Bell show, Coast to Coast AM. I remember falling asleep to that, and Mel's Hole just became kind of a household word, amongst me and my friends. And whether it's true or not, it's a good symbol, I think, of the weirdness of this area, of kind of the magic to the folklore that we have here.
Roz in Paranormal Forum also points out that at one point this supposed hole was actually blacked out on Google Maps.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think I I looked up the coordinates somebody told me of the supposed spot where it was, and it is blacked out, or was at some point. When I searched it, there was definitely a censored region near the Ellensburg area.
That is
and so, I don't know. Who knows? But that's what the beauty of it, I think, is that we can't know, really. And these stories kind of take on a life of their own.
Is there any coordinates to where this is supposed to be? Is there a map to it? Is it reachable in order to try and get that area? Or is it so much in folklore that no matter what, this supposed hole, if it does exist, just happens to be moving all the time?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, no, I'm just saying it's a good question because I'm not sure of what the coordinates are. It seems like there's kind of a whole new era of urban legends and paranormal things that circulate on the internet, kind of like creepypastas, kind of, like Slender Man or something, where it's becoming increasingly difficult to understand where myth ends and where reality begins, and it makes things even more complicated when you try to investigate them outside of that context.
Vince, has anybody else besides this so-called Mel person who we don't know exists ever seen the hole?
I believe Red Elk has seen it, or at least I remember him speaking on it quite a bit with Art Bell back in the day. He passed away recently, unfortunately. But, I remember Mel resurfacing every once in a while on the show, and other than him and Red Elk, I don't recall anyone else really speaking at it at length. I do know there have been plenty of people who have gone and tried to find it. From my research, I've never really found anything substantial about coordinates. It's always just kind of described in this general area, kind of in the Ellensburg area. And, if Pacific North Weird were to do a show on Mel's Hole, we'd certainly, go out and, ask people and try to find it and stuff. But I think, the beauty of the episode would lie in interviewing people just talking about it and talking about what they've heard about it. It becomes, whether it's true or not, it becomes kind of this measure of folkloric pride in the region. And you ask people in the area, you ask people who know about Mel's Hole to talk about it, they light up. They have a good time talking about it. And, I think something like that would make really, really great material for a little documentary that we would do.
though we got about 2 minutes before we got to go to our final break of the night here, but one of the things I do want to ask you about Mel's Hole, and you mentioned it quickly, was that somebody had thrown a dead dog into the hole and it came back to life. I mean, something along those lines. I mean, it makes it sound so hokey when you hear something along those lines, but then you hear of portals, you hear of vortexes, you hear of these strange anomalies that happen around them, and then all of a sudden you scratch your head and say, well, this could be true.
Yeah, and you also hear about similar holes with similar effects in different parts of the world. You know, I remember hearing about a hole with similar properties in the state of Arizona that was actually tended to by the Basque communities in that area, which I have a special connection to because my weirdo last name, Ynzunza, is a Basque word. It's an ancient Basque word for a burial swamp, kind of like their own little ancient primordial vortexes where they throw their dead bodies into. But yeah, there's another, perhaps urban legend, a bit of folklore in the Arizona area of a similar hole. So, throwing your dead dog into something and having it come out as like zombie dog, that does sound kind of hokey. But, you start to hear maybe similar stories around the world at different times. And, yeah, you do scratch your head and think, well, maybe there is something to that.
Roz is saying in Paranormal Forum once again that a news crew did try to go and take a video of it. It was on YouTube, but when they tried to approach the land, they were actually blocked by the government. So it's one of those strange keepings, much like the Ynzunza Ranch in the southern part of the state with James Gilliland. It's very, very strange indeed. Vince, Alex,
and luckily the government never... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, luckily the government never got to the Ynzunza Ranch. I mean, that's
not yet,
that's
anyway.
Something beautiful that we can all
surprised.
see.
I'm still surprised over that. Still surprised.
Oh, well, you still can.
Yes, absolutely. You know what? Ashley, James's person who helps him out around the ranch, she's actually given me an open invite to go down there anytime I want. And I keep saying, I'm going to go. I haven't gone yet. I know I have to, but I have to figure out what is going on. I just want to see that alien that walks into James's kitchen at any time he wants just to say, hello, we're here. How you been doing?
Well, that's kind of familiar of it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just stopping by for a bathroom
At least
break.
not.
Exactly. Hey, guys, hold on. We're going to go to our final break of the night. We are talking with Vince Ynzunza and Alex Sullivan from Pacific North Weird. We have 1/2 hour to go. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Talk to you on the other side.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us.
From the radio, commercials, to banners, to social media.
Have a product you'd like our host to endorse? We can do that too.
Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
The last Monday of the month on Spaced Out Radio is a night of psychic vision, mediumship, UFO and ET contact, Bigfoot stories, animal communication, and so much more with me, Elizabeth Anglin. I'd love it if you would join host Dave Scott and I on the myriad of topics we delve into. Every month, we share new views that may help you understand your own experiences. So tune on in at spacedoutradio.com and stamp your cosmic passport.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Missed most of tonight's show? Don't worry, you didn't miss a thing. You can head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and download our archives for free. And don't forget to get your Space Travelers membership today. Now, back to tonight's show.
Welcome back to the final half hour of Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. We've rounded third. We're heading for home as we start off another week here on the mighty SOR. Hey, if you are following us on Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Twitter, we can be found at Spaced Out Radio. On Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Our YouTube channel, where we store our archives, is Spaced Out Radio Show. Click on subscribe for that. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Tomorrow night on the show, we are going to be having a bunch of people come in. We have no official guests, but there's going to be a bunch of people popping by. Why? It's my birthday party. So we're going to go on air, have some fun, and just chat about all the weird stuff and weird stories that have been going on and around, and we're going to get into everything from Bigfoot to aliens to ghosts and absolutely everything. I hope you stick around and join us, because we want to take your calls tomorrow night as well. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. If you're in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, Paranormal Forum online, or on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles or the SOR Space Travelers, appreciate you taking the time out of your night to spend it with us. Tonight, we are wrapping things up once again with members of the Pacific North Weird television show, Vince Ynzunza and Alex Sullivan. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Now, being on the West Coast, much like I am, we hear of all these sea monsters that happen to be around. And one of the biggest ones, literally and figuratively, is the Cadborosaurus that is said to patrol the waters between the border of British Columbia and Alaska, way up there, all the way down to the tip of California. Has Cadborosaurus ever come into play with any fishermen or sea lovers in Washington State that you have been able to track down?
I know that Cadborosaurus has been seen down by the tip of the Olympic Peninsula, San Juan Islands, back in the 30s. Even in the 50s, I believe in Klamath Falls, there were women who reported seeing it. It's much like Bigfoot. It's considered one of those relic hominid, or relic creatures. I keep saying hominids. Relic creatures, kind of like something that's supposed to be extinct, but much like the coelacanths, or like other things that we find every once in a while. It's a link to the past. This water dinosaur thing that's just off the coast. It's something we definitely want to do a video on and investigate some more. I think, when you think of the Pacific Northwest and the cryptids here, and the paranormal aspects here, so many people immediately go to Bigfoot and flying saucers, which are great, but I don't think there's not enough love for our water dinosaurs all around us. I think there should be. I think Cadborosaurus is just as cool as Nessie, frankly.
I do too, and to think that a lot of people believe in the scientific community that it's just a giant oarfish that seems to be coming to the surface, or maybe a sturgeon because it has been seen going up rivers. It could be. It really could be, until we get some quality video of it. But, of course, then the skeptics will say, well, that's CGI.
Well, yeah, video is so untrustworthy these days. I mean, you can hop on, the After Effects program I have on my computer that I pay $50 a month for to Adobe, and I can probably craft a pretty decent looking UFO sighting, or get a friend in a Bigfoot suit and alter it just enough to where it might look authentic. So yeah, it's definitely trust video footage these days, and frankly photographs too. With the advent of Photoshop and really just all the video editing apps we have on our phone. You can literally there's apps where you can literally add a flying saucer to a picture, and kind of shade it and kind of make it to look like it's part of the original image. So yeah.
Before we continue on, Alex and Vince, because we got a bunch of other creatures we got to get into, like Ramtha. I do have some questions coming out of the SOR Space Travelers room for you. Start off with Gloria and then a pair from Claudia. Gloria is wondering, have you ever traveled down to Mount Shasta to see if it is hollow?
We have not been down. It's like we kind of started the show really centralized in the Olympia, Thurston County, Lewis County areas of Washington, and we just kind of started. We have 9 to 5 jobs, and we did the show on the weekends and after work and everything, and we kind of just started making episodes about things that were around us. We started off with the Mima Mounds phenomenon, here in Olympia, Washington. And, as we got better at the show and the show got more successful and more people started to get into it, we started to branch out a bit more. Northern California, the Shasta Mountain, British Columbia even, those different extremes of the spectrum, geographic spectrum that we're on, those are definitely on our maps and definitely something we want to explore. But just at this point, we haven't ventured down there yet.
Claudia is wondering if either of you have ever seen a crystal skull or heard the stories about them.
I've definitely heard the stories about them. I have not seen one in real life. Not one of the 12 or 13 that are supposedly imbued with these mystic qualities. But the crystal skulls are one of my very favorite legendary items. I don't know how you even describe them, but there's something about it that's very intriguing to me. It combines a lot of different, ancient cultures and sort of New Age mysticism, and I think they're extremely interesting, and I would love to be around one day. I'm sure Vince would too.
Vince,
absolutely.
Are you up to date on the crystal skull?
Not as much as Alexandra is. She knows a lot more about that aspect than I have. The farthest I've gone is enjoying a bottle of Dan Aykroyd's Crystal Skull vodka.
Yes, that is good stuff. I'm not going to lie. I actually, in Vancouver, when he first brought that out at a bar called the Roxy, I actually had a shot of his vodka straight from him.
Oh, man, that must have been a really cool experience.
It was kind of cool. It lasted all of about 28 seconds, but it was well worth it. I got another question
Absolutely.
from Claudia coming in for you, Vince, and
Mm-hmm.
Alex, actually. We'll start with you, Vince, on this one. Have you ever had your own paranormal experience?
Yeah, actually, during one of the filmings of our second full-length episode, where we explored the basement of the Freight House Square in Tacoma, Washington. The Freight House Square, as it stands today, is kind of Tacoma's version of the Pike Place Market up in Seattle. A lot of independent vendors come in and sell their wares there. There's produce. I think there's a statue of Sasquatch somewhere in there. But we were in the basement, and it used to be, connected to the major train lines that ran up and down the West Coast. And the basement at the time was used as a makeshift morgue. So like you would have people would invariably perish somewhere on the train line, and having a dead body in your train might be bad for business. So like they needed a place at each stop, to take off a someone who died of a heart attack or whatnot. So like they kept these bodies in the basement of the Freight House Square. We had, Alexandra and myself, we had gone down there to investigate with Pierce County Paranormal, led by Diane Wilkins, and we were down there exploring. And we enter this section, this particular room that has a bunch of sheets hung up on the walls. And I've got at the time, it was the only camera we really had. It was this kind of cheap handheld camcorder that I got from Best Buy. And I had the flashlight turned on, there was a light attached to my camera, that would give me light. And every time I would point the camera at this particular sheet, the light would blink on and off about 2 or 3 times. Like, I didn't know what was causing that. I thought, maybe the battery's running low. I would move the camera away, and then suddenly the light would go solid, and it wouldn't malfunction or blink. Every single time, without error, when we would turn it back to this one particular sheet, it would blink on and off. Not sure what that meant. There was definitely something really strange going on. Marcus McCoy, our shaman, exorcist friend, was with us, and he was definitely feeling something really strange in this kind of 4 square foot area where this electronic phenomenon was happening with my camera. Of course, it was all being recorded while it happened. We had even a second camera that our partner and musician Peter Vargas was holding, and he documented the whole thing just from a different vantage point, recording the light going on and off. It was really eerie.
Alex, how about you? Memorable
Well,
paranormal?
actually, yes. The inspiration for our second episode was actually a ghost experience I had at my grandmother's house, which is in Chehalis, Washington. The foundations of the house used to be the county poor farm, which was a thing that existed back in the day where if you couldn't afford to have a home or were homeless or were experiencing hardships, you could go there and work and they would provide you with food and shelter. So I woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I saw somebody in the corner of my room there, and I was completely terrified, thinking that somebody had broken in and was about to try to murder me or something. And so I kind of lunged at them out of some kind of primal, aggressive, like fight or flight instinct. And I turned on the light to see what it was, and I see this older man who looked like a logger, wearing like a plaid shirt, had a beard, and then he just kind of slowly dissolved in front of me. And it was incredibly strange and frightening, but it was also almost relieving in a way, because I'm like, oh, great, somebody's actually broken in here. I'm going to have to defend myself, and I could be killed or go to jail. So I was kind of relieved that it was just a ghost, but it was still probably the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. So we kind of talk about that in our second episode. That's probably the most recent paranormal thing that's happened to me that really kind of shook me up. But overall, it wasn't too traumatic, but it still definitely scared me at the time.
Okay, we got to get into Ramtha here because I always thought this was like a cartoon legend or a Hollywood legend. But Vince, you're telling me Ramtha is being seen in Washington State.
Yeah, well, for anyone out there who's doesn't know who Ramtha is, long story short, very long story short, 1977, there was this woman named J.Z. Knight. The Z stands for zebra, Judith Zebra Knight. And she was in her home in Tacoma, Washington. And in her kitchen, she encountered this entity that himself Ramtha the Enlightened One, and claimed that he was a warrior that came from the continent of Lemuria. Lemuria is kind of the Pacific Ocean's version of Atlantis, this long-lost continent that once had a very advanced technological and spiritual civilization on it. J.Z. Knight claimed that this Ramtha entity entered her body and started teaching her about the secrets of the universe and instructed her to go to Yelm, Washington, where she created Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. And the basic tenet of the school is that everyone is their own god, that there are certain practices that can be completed in order to achieve godhood, in order to achieve true enlightenment. People spend a lot of money to go there, but the things that happen on the ranch are just bizarre. There's sessions of blindfolded archery. There's a blindfolded labyrinth that you have to find your way through in order to get to a next level. It's almost like Washington's version of science in a way, but we did a pretty extensive episode on the phenomenon. Interviewed people who were somewhat connected with the school, people who were in their own right experts in channeling entities. Interviewed one former student of the school, and I think really came up with probably one of our very best videos, just explaining the phenomenon. I had plenty of people who before I'd really found the subject of Ramtha and J.Z. Knight to be kind of dry, and they watched our episode and suddenly were very entertained and found the entire thing really interesting. And it is an interesting subject. Anytime, whether you believe that Mrs. Knight is actually channeling this 35,000-year-old spirit or not, she's doing something right. I mean, she is one of the richest people in Washington State, has connections to various levels of the Washington State Democratic Party, has had the likes of Salma Hayek, Linda Evans. The guy who played BJ Honeycutt in the show MASH at one point was a member of the school and associated with J.Z. Knight. I've seen pictures of J.Z. Knight hanging out with Roseanne. She's definitely has, either she's possessed by an ancient spirit or she is one of the most talented women to ever live. Either one is pretty interesting to us.
That is so freaky when people get wrapped up in things like that. It really makes you wonder whether or not they are doing it for the sake of fraudulently taking money in a legal context, or whether this is truly happening to them in regards to the Lemurian from 35,000 years ago channeling through.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if there's a combination of it. I've often thought, maybe we do encounter or have these moments where we do encounter legitimate entities, or something legitimately paranormal happens to us. Maybe something really did happen to J.Z. Knight in 1977 in her kitchen in Tacoma. But at the same time, if you interact with the spirit, there's still the human element of you that on some level has to be steering. So maybe something really did happen to J.Z. Knight, but then maybe she's also a very, very shrewd business person and kind of took advantage of that. There's plenty of just surface evidence to state that she is interested in finance, in having having money and becoming profitable. I believe in Austria in the 90s, I believe, there was another woman who also claimed to channel Ramtha. And Jay-Z and I ended up successfully suing her for $600 in psychic damages because she actually has a copyright on the entity Ramtha.
Oh,
so,
nice.
yeah, I mean, there's I didn't know you could copyright entities, but...
Well, I wonder if I can get my property on the moon where the American flag is, and maybe I could sue for that. I don't know.
I think if you get the lawyer, you might be able to.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Hey, we only got a little bit of time left. I do want to get into the Mima Mounds here in regards to this legend. What's it all about, Alex?
Well, the Mima Mounds are a phenomenon located slightly south of Olympia, Washington. And we did our very first episode on them just because they're such a strange phenomenon. It's these humps and mounds of earth for acres and acres across this kind of prairie land. And these perfect mound shapes are formed, something geographically, just like the geological processes form this. Others think there might be something stranger going on, like anything from alien connections to some sort of primitive gopher that created these or tunneled to create these. But they're just also this very strange American feature that we've discovered in our travels, where apparently there are places around the country and around the world that have these sort of strange mounds in the ground, but they're also just very strange looking. There's just no other way to put it. They're just these bizarre geographical features in the land, and we thought that they were worth noting because they're just such an anomaly. And I don't know, does Vince have anything to say about them?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, when you go out on the Mima Mounds, you just feel different. You feel special. There's something really unusual about seeing the land kind of bubble up like that, but so perfectly and beautifully. And you go to like many of the Mima Mounds have been, of course, bulldozed over and turned, they're neighborhoods and highways in the area now. It used to be a stretch a lot further than you can see it now. But there's you go to the protected national park outside of, right south of Olympia, Washington, and you can really get a cool sense of what it was like, before civilization set in. Except for the fact that right next to Mima Mounds National Park, there's a rifle shooting zone, so you get to enjoy the majestic weirdness of this anomaly while the sound of gunfire is just over the fence. But that kind of adds to the weirdness to it as well, I guess.
The only weird mounds I have ever seen was driving through Nevada when I don't even know what the town is called, but it's north of Las Vegas by a couple of hours. And you come around this bend and there's a dry lake bed there, and then all of a sudden you see like these almost shaped like gold bricks all across the desert land. Then you realize that those mounds that are in Nevada, they are where all the chemical weapons have been stored since World War II. And you're thinking, oh crap, this would not be a good place to be if one of these exploded. This would hurt.
Right.
But that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen when it comes to what's on the ground in regards to that. But in regards to this, have they ever figured out what is actually causing this? Is it much like the stones that move along the desert in the dry lake beds, where it's just a natural phenomena? Or what do you think it is, Vince?
I think it's a natural phenomenon. There's good evidence that they happened due to glacial erosion long time ago, very long time ago. As to why it's not everywhere, I don't think that's really been I haven't been satisfied by any answers to that. there are, plenty of theories that, there are actually underground tunnels where aliens, keep their saucers down there, and there's actually a few local authors who purport that. But I have to feel like there's just something natural about it which is kind of cool, because it means that the world still kind of works in ways we don't understand. The world still has some magic to it. The world can still surprise us and give us an expression like that we don't fully understand. And I just love going there because it's beautiful. I grew up around it, so like for me, they were never weird. They were never unusual. So.
We only got about 3 minutes left with the team from Pacific North Weird, Vince and Alexandra. Alexandra, we'll start with you. How many episodes have you guys done on Pacific North Weird, and what's the favorite ones you've done so far?
Well, let's see. We do some that are shorter length and some that are longer length, full-length episodes. I would say my favorites are probably the UFO Festival episode, just because it's such a well-rounded picture of this festival that's really so opening and warm, and such a fun introduction to the topic, where there's aspects of seriousness, but it's also playful and joyous, and it really kind of encapsulates what the show's about. And also, I would probably say the ECETI Ranch episode I kind of have a soft spot for, just because it's so strange, but also so beautiful, and I enjoyed my time there so much.
Vince, is there anything that sticks out for you in regards to the episodes, or what do you look forward to filming here in the near future?
Right now, well, my personal favorite episode that we've done is the Ramtha episode. I think just it's got all the elements that I think it really makes our show what it is. Everything really clicked with that one. What I really look forward to filming, I really want to get more into D.B. Cooper, frankly. I want to get more into some of the local kind of legends about things that, are definitely can be proven that have happened. I want to work more with, I really look forward with working with more musicians, with, on a lot of our full-length episodes, we end the show with an original music video, that involves a song written by a local musician kind of having to do with our subject matter. And that's really one of the funnest aspects to the show, is kind of just meeting different artists who can contribute something to it. Because it's always a lot more, of course, than just me and Alexandra. Like, we got a really, really great crew with us that I got to give a little shout out to. Peter, our musician, writes a really good soundtrack. Tyler, our Bigfoot guy. And our show definitely wouldn't be anywhere near where it is now without our brilliant executive producer, Montana Salzoni. She's been a great help and a good friend to us, too. And throwing that together. So I just like working with my team, and like anything we do, we have the best time ever doing it.
That's it. If we didn't have fun, we wouldn't do it.
Oh, for sure. You guys got to do me one favor, though. I am a big time Jimi Hendrix fan, and I would love to know if his spirit is walking around his Jimi Hendrix music experience. That's what I would like to know.
I think we can definitely do something on that. That would be a lot of fun.
We need to definitely.
Paul Allen may have something to say about that, but we'll have to see.
I'll see if I can talk to Paul about it.
Speed dial. It's all on speed dial.
Yeah.
Vince Ynzunza and Alex Sullivan from Pacific North Weird, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's been an absolute blast learning about what you guys are covering on a daily basis down there. Appreciate your hard work, and thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio.
Thank you so much. Yeah. We really had a great time.
Absolutely.
We did, yes.
You guys hold on. I'm going to wrap up this show and call it the night, because in exactly 2 minutes, it's my birthday, and I'm going to go celebrate with, I don't know, maybe have a beer. Why not?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Want to say thank you to everyone listening in on the SHR Media Network. If you're on Paranormal Forum, appreciate you taking the time in. Along with those listening in on the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, Euphoria Chronicles, and the SOR Space Travelers. Appreciate all of you being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, it's just a mixed bag. We're just going to have some fun. We're going to crack open some wobbly pops, celebrate old Davy's birthday with some paranormal ET Bigfoot talk. I'm even going to get a psychic reading from Joanna tomorrow night. See where that leads me. I'm interested. I'm going to have some fun. Why not? Celebrate my birthday with you. Let's do this thing. Have some fun. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. Thank you so much for being with us. Make sure you subscribe to that as well. And don't forget, anything you need to find, it's on our website, spacedoutradio.com. Once again, I am your host, Dave Scott. I will talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. We've crossed the border. It's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. And happy birthday to anybody else sharing this day. Hope you enjoy your day. Have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. We're going to rock it out with our music master, the guitar god, the fretless wonder, the man with the best goatee in rock and roll, Ron Bumblefoot THAL. He leads us in, he leads us out every night on this program, the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. Let it rock, Bumblefoot. Good night.
Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you fall.